Welcome back to the channel, my friends. Today, we delve back into the darkness with 3 bone-chilling tales that explore the sinister side of being home alone. These are the kinds of stories that make you want to double-check your locks, peep under the bed, and maybe even leave the lights on, just in case. We're talking about those primal fears that grip you when you're alone in the supposed safety of your own home. Those moments when every creak and groan sends shivers down your spine. These are 3 true disturbing home alone horror stories that will make you think twice about staying home alone. So lock your doors, turn off the lights, and get ready to be thoroughly spooked.
Imagine this. You're home alone, the sun has long since set, and an unsettling silence hangs heavy in the air. Our first story takes us to the quiet suburbs, where a young woman named Sarah found herself living this exact nightmare. Sarah was used to the quiet. Living alone in her grandmother's spacious old house had its perks, but it also meant getting used to the symphony of creaks and groans that played out every night. But lately, those familiar sounds had taken on a sinister edge. It began subtly, a muffled thud from the attic above, a scratching sound against her bedroom wall late at night. At first, she dismissed it, blaming it on the age of the house, or perhaps a curious squirrel. But as the days turned into sleepless nights, the sounds grew more frequent, more deliberate. One particularly chilling evening, as Sarah settled into bed with a book, a loud thump echoed from the attic, followed by the distinct sound of footsteps. Her heart pounded in her chest, her blood turning ice cold. Fear, raw and consuming, washed over her. Mustering a sliver of courage, Sarah decided to investigate. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and her racing heartbeat, she slowly ascended the creaky attic stairs. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of dust and something else, something unsettlingly unfamiliar. As she crept through the musty darkness, her flashlight beam danced across cobwebs and forgotten relics. And then she saw it, a discolored section of the floor, slightly depressed as if something heavy had been resting on it. Curiosity warred with fear as Sarah cautiously approached the spot. Kneeling down, she pressed her ear against the cold wood. Silence. Just when she was about to dismiss her suspicions, a soft rhythmic tapping reached her ears, seemingly emanating from within the floorboards. Panic seized her. Someone or something was definitely inside the attic. She scrambled back, her hand trembling as she fumbled for her phone. There was no signal. She was trapped. With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah bolted down the stairs, her every instinct screaming at her to run. She raced to the front door, fumbling with the lock, her breath catching in her throat. Finally, the door swung open, and she stumbled out into the cool night air, the blessed feeling of safety washing over her. She called the police from a neighbor's house, her voice trembling as she recounted the terrifying experience. When the police arrived and cautiously searched the attic, they found evidence of someone living there. Blankets, food wrappers, and a small, crudely dug hole in the corner leading into the wall. Whoever had been hiding in her attic had escaped. The thought sent chills down Sarah's spine. Even after the police left, even after she moved out of that house, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her, that the intruder from the attic was still out there, lurking in the shadows.
Our next story takes us to a seemingly ordinary neighborhood, where a series of unsettling events transformed a teenager's life into a waking nightmare. It all began with a simple note, a single piece of paper that carried a chilling message, a harbinger of the terror that was to come. 17-year-old David, home alone for the weekend, discovered the note wedged between the screen door and the front door. It was a plain white envelope, with no return address, just his name scrawled on the front in uneven, almost childish handwriting. Intrigued and slightly unnerved, David cautiously opened the envelope. Inside, on a single sheet of lined paper, was a short, cryptic message, "I'm watching you." His blood ran cold. A wave of unease washed over him. He scanned the street, his eyes darting from house to house, searching for any sign of movement. But the neighborhood was eerily quiet, bathed in the warm glow of the afternoon sun. At first, David tried to brush it off as a prank, a cruel joke played by some kids in the neighborhood. But deep down, a knot of fear twisted in his stomach. The words lingered in his mind, echoing with a sinister undertone that he couldn't ignore. As the day wore on, the unease gnawed at him. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside his window, sent shivers down his spine. He found himself constantly looking over his shoulder, his senses on high alert. Nightfall brought no comfort. Sleep eluded him, his mind racing with unsettling possibilities. He lay in bed, listening intently to the symphony of nighttime noises, trying to convince himself that it was just his imagination running wild. Then, it happened. A soft tap, tap, tap on his bedroom window. David's heart leaped into his throat. He froze, holding his breath, his eyes wide with terror. The tapping continued, persistent, relentless. Mustering every ounce of courage, he slowly crept towards the window, his hand trembling as he reached for the curtain. As he peeked through the blinds, his blood ran ice cold. Standing on his lawn, bathed in the pale moonlight, was a shadowy figure. Their face was obscured by the darkness, but David could make out the faint outline of a hooded figure, their eyes glinting menacingly in the darkness. They stared directly at him, their gaze unwavering, sending a jolt of pure terror through his veins. David stumbled back from the window, his heart pounding in his chest. He fumbled for his phone, his fingers trembling as he dialed 911. But just as he was about to hit the call button, the line went dead. He tried again and again, but the phone remained dead. Panic surged through him. He was trapped, alone, with no way to call for help. He raced to the front door, his mind racing. But as he reached for the handle, he heard a voice, low and menacing, whispering from just beyond the door. "Don't even think about it!" David froze, his blood turning to ice. He was trapped, at the mercy of whoever was outside his door, whoever had been watching him, tormenting him. He backed away from the door slowly, his eyes darting around the room, searching for a weapon, an escape route, anything. He spent the rest of the night huddled in the corner of his room, clutching a baseball bat, his heart pounding in his ears. Every creak of the house, every whisper of the wind sent a fresh wave of terror washing over him. The police arrived at dawn, alerted by his frantic parents who had finally managed to get through to him. But the mysterious figure was gone, vanished without a trace. David never saw the hooded figure again. But the memory of that night, the chilling note, the tapping on the window, the menacing whisper continued to haunt him, a constant reminder that sometimes the most ordinary places can harbor the most terrifying secrets.
Chapter 3. The Masked Stranger. Our final story takes us to the city, where a sense of anonymity can sometimes provide a breeding ground for fear. This is a story about the unsettling realization that you're never truly alone, that someone, or something, might be watching your every move. Mark, a young professional living in a high-rise apartment building, always felt a sense of security living on the 10th floor. The city lights twinkled below, a constant reminder of the bustling life outside his window. But that sense of security was about to be shattered, replaced by a chilling fear that would seep into his very bones. It began with a fleeting glimpse, a figure standing across the street, partially hidden in the shadows of an alleyway. At first, Mark dismissed it as just another face in the crowd, a trick of the light. But as the days turned into weeks, he began to notice the same figure, always in the same spot, always watching his building. There was something about the figure that sent chills down Mark's spine. They were always dressed in dark clothing, their face obscured by a blank white mask. It was like something out of a horror movie, a chilling reminder that even in the heart of a bustling city, darkness could lurk around every corner. As the weeks progressed, the sightings became more frequent, more brazen. Mark would catch the masked stranger staring at his apartment at odd hours, their presence a constant, unsettling specter in his life. He tried to rationalize it, to convince himself that it was just a coincidence, but deep down, a seed of fear had been planted. One evening, as Mark was working late on a presentation, he glanced up from his computer screen, drawn by an unexplainable feeling of being watched. He peered out his window, scanning the street below, and then he saw him. The masked stranger was standing directly across the street, their gaze fixed intently on Mark's apartment. But this time, something was different. The stranger raised their hand, a slow, deliberate movement, and pointed directly at Mark. Terror gripped Mark's heart. He stumbled back from the window, his pulse racing, his mind reeling. This was no longer just a creepy coincidence. It was a direct threat. He was being targeted, hunted by a stranger with a chillingly blank face. Desperate for help, Mark reached for his phone to call the police. But as he did, the lights in his apartment flickered and died, plunging him into darkness. Panic surged through him. He was alone, trapped in his own home with a stalker who knew where he lived. He fumbled for his phone in the darkness, his breath catching in his throat. He had to get out of there, had to find help. but as he reached the front door, he heard it. A soft metallic click, the unmistakable sound of his own apartment door being unlocked from the outside. Frozen in terror, Mark watched as the doorknob slowly turned, the shadow of a figure falling across the floor. He was out of options, trapped. The masked stranger was inside his apartment.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more chilling content. Remember, whether it's an unexplained noise in the attic, a cryptic message on your doorstep, or a lurking figure in the shadows, always trust your instincts. And remember, always stay vigilant, especially when you're home alone. Sweet dreams, my friends.